This interrogation of Alec Murdaugh blows his story out of the water, and we're going to talk about the highlights now. Hello everybody and welcome back to the sofa. That's the sofa and that's our trusty sidekick, Chicken scratching over on the sofa, and my name's Paul. Thank you to everybody who makes the Sofa Squad possible. Special shout out to those top tier Patreon members, as well as all the other Patreons, channel members, and everybody who hangs out in the comment section, likes and shares and talks about the victims, memories, and lives, and keeps the Sofa Squad doors open and the cushions fluffed. Now today, you heard a little intro, we are going to be talking about the interrogation, this interview with Alec Murdaugh. If you're not familiar with this, the case is currently going on right now. It's February 17th, 2023. So Alec is accused of taking the life of his wife Maggie and his son Paul. He also stands accused of major financial crimes. He is a very prominent lawyer with a very prominent family in South Carolina. And so this is going on right now, and this trial has turned into an absolute soap opera. So what we're going to be watching is this interview that he has gone in for. Now, he already has, talked to the police a couple of times, obviously the night thereof, one after that. So he's coming back in again. He is sitting with his attorney, and he's talking to a couple of detectives, just to build the foundation for what we're watching up in here, okay? So that's that. Now, what I've done is I've gone through and picked out some of the highlights that I want to discuss, and just looking at the bits of highlights, it's about, honestly, like 39 minutes worth. So buckle in and get your coffee ready because this might be a while. Now, if you don't want to hear me blabbing my mouth and going on and on, head on over to Law and Crime Network and watch the full unadulterated version of it, okay? But if you do want to hear my commentary, then stay tuned. And remember, it's just commentary and it's just my opinion. I am not a lawyer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a cop. I would not be good on this jury because I am biased. I am just a regular old person with opinions, a sofa, and a dog. Okay. So that's that. Let's go ahead and dive on in.
But before we get started with your questions, this has been going on for over 2 months, and we've done a lot of work.
I know you have.
And I've got some more questions that I need to get clarifications on.
Sure.
Okay. So we'll start with that.
Wait a minute.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I'm mistaken. I thought we were coming here so you could update him on what's going on.
And I intend to do that as
Okay, let's do that first.
Okay.
All right, let's do that first.
The update is I'm doing the investigation, and I have some questions that I would like some answers to. And I mean, certainly, if I ask the question, if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to answer it.
No, I'm fine with that.
I mean, it's more clarifications of the 2 interviews you've already given me.
Totally understand.
Okay.
Just wait 1 second.
Yeah.
Wait 1 second. All right. I need for you to tell me, are you going to give us information, or are we just here for you to ask questions?
Now, I'm going to give you some information.
Right. Why can't you give us information first?
Some of the information that you're asking about are in my questions. And as we go through, you'll see.
Okay.
I don't mind.
I know you don't, but I can't. I mean, I'm a friend, but I'm also a lawyer, and I like to know what we do. I like to understand what we're talking about.
Okay, I wanted to put this clip in for a few different reasons. First of all, to build the foundation. They said some pertinent information. Been going on for a couple of months, talked to them a couple of times. He's coming in there with some information, or to get information. But you can tell the friend/lawyer sitting there is like, well, now hold on, buddy. Hold on. What's going on here now? Are you going to give us information, or what are we here for? Now, I will say this, part of me is like, oh, God, leave it to the lawyer to take all the fun out of it. Because I was like, oh, we're getting ready to get some juicy stuff, right? And he's going to put a block to it. But in the legal, put all that aside. Obviously, he's doing a good job as a lawyer. He's protecting the client. Like, wait a minute, what are we here for? I thought we were coming in here for this, but you're saying this. Like, what's up? Because obviously we know at this point, these cops, and as we'll see along the way, they know something's up. They know things are not adding up with Alec, right? And they want to get as much information out of him as they can. And clearly the attorney's going to try and back that up or, protect him from that. Which, again, I always am like this. I'm like, if he's completely innocent, we shouldn't have to be worried about this. But we always see wrongful convictions, and we see that sometimes cops can get their blindsides onto people. So I get it. Now, also notice this with Alec's body behavior. And again, this is not coming from me talking about like, oh, I read a book or whatever. It's just what I've observed of him, right? From a non-professional viewpoint, meaning that. The constant shaking his head, he does it. This is just like his thing to do. I will give Alec this. No matter what is coming at the pipeline from him, he's like, absolutely, absolutely. I'll answer the questions. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. Simmer down, you little chihuahua. I'm going to answer his questions. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll give him that. No matter what, I'll sign this. We'll get this going. We'll do da-da-da-da. Now, here's my thing. You can look at it two ways. Number one, he didn't have anything to do with it, so he wants to help figure out what's going on, right? Or he is trying to be very confident and come off as that as, I got nothing to hide. Let me help facilitate this because I'm going with the story that this wasn't me. Even though a lot of evidence that circumstantially is starting to point to that's not adding up. Let's continue.
Well, I need you to answer this question. Are you asking him questions to further your investigation, or are you asking him questions because you think that he's a suspect? I need a straight answer.
I am asking these questions to further my investigation.
All right. Does that mean that you're not asking him these questions as a suspect?
Okay, feelings aside, excellent question from the attorney. Excellent question. How many times have we seen wrongful conviction stuff like this where we're like, I wish someone was there with the person asking this question, right? So I'll give them that. Now, of course, if we're erring on the side that we think Alec had something to do with this, then of course it's like, would you just shut him up and let him talk and dig his hole deeper, kind of thing, right? But definitely he is protecting the client and he is asking some very, important questions. You saw the cop, because we already know, and we're going to see the cop is going to be asking questions to further the investigation, because as the cop will state here in a little bit, no matter what they do, their investigation can't seem to move past Alec.
Because I'm not comfortable with you asking him questions as a suspect when I came here with the thought that you were going to be telling him where you are in the investigation, what it is you've done, seen, uncovered, whatever. That's why we came here.
Well, let me respond to your question. Yeah. It may not be a direct answer that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And I've told Alec this when we first met. Any homicide investigation, mm-hmm. you start with the closest person and or the person who found the deceased. Mm-hmm. Both cases, that's Alec. Mm-hmm. Everybody stays in that investigation until we can get them out. And right now, because of the questions that I have that I need explanations for, I cannot get Alec out.
Okay.
Now, you heard it from the horse's mouth right there, right? He can't, no matter what they do, they can't cross him off the list, right? So of course they're going to have him come in here and do that. And of course they're going to want him to come in here and answer the questions. At this point, I have no reason to doubt that Alec was very willing to come in here and do that, right? Because we've seen that he's been very willing to come in and do everything and agree to all this stuff. At some point, obviously, he probably stopped. Maybe that was with his arrest or the pretend, taking of his life on the side of the road. I don't know what came first. But he was very agreeable and, going along with stuff. So, but again, putting feelings aside, the attorney is doing his job.
All right, well, Alec, if you're comfortable and you feel okay,
yes,
then that's fine.
But anything to help.
All right, that's fine.
And again, just like I said, Alec, anything to help. Let's go. Let's roll. Come on. Let's do this.
And I know when you were at the office, you were working on motions, and some of those motions you dealt with were for Paul's, the boat accident, or the boat case.
I'm not really doing the legal work.
I understand, but you're Paul's dad, you're a lawyer, you're definitely going to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So what were those motions I mean, did it deal with Parker's, or was it the actual boat accident, or?
It was the civil case.
Okay.
Okay, now I put this clip in there because I'm like, huh. So they're doing the timeline for the day, and Alec is claiming that he is at the office, at work, whatever, working on motions for the civil case for the boating accident. Now, if you haven't been following this, hardcore, his son Paul, one of the deceased, was involved in a boating accident, and he was, like the driver of the boat, and it ended a young lady's life. And this did not go over well in the town. This, divided, a lot of people, kind of a thing. And so this is one potential motive for what happened to Paul and Maggie, but also there's lawsuits involved and stuff like this. So my thought process here with Alec is, I'm like, so he's here working on these motions, possibly brewing, simmering all day long at this civil suit and the trouble that his son has caused him and what's coming down the pipeline. So again, just some thoughts here. Let's continue.
And Maggie was supposed to be coming home. I've since found out she was worried about me and me worried about my dad. Mm-hmm. And so she came home.
Bing, 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 boom, 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 red flags are going. Now, through his blubbering, what he is talking about is Maggie. And he is saying he was going to be going to visit his mother. The whole situation with his mother and father is not well. Mother is, she has Alzheimer's. She's not well. She's confused. Father's gone. He was saying, Maggie was worried about me, so she was going to come home and go there with me. Now, we've heard testimony already from Maggie's sister, okay, who Maggie is saying that Paul is, having issues, about the father, the mother, and all this stuff. And so the sister's like, you should go there and be with him. If he's wanting you to be there, maybe he wants you to go with him, yada, yada, yada. So this is completely opposite of what we have found out. I am going to err on believing Maggie's sister, who has no reason to lie, right? I mean, if anything, she is carrying this terrible burden on her shoulder about urging her sister to go, right? Bless her heart. Her testimony we'll discuss in another video because it just ripped my heart out for her. So keep that in mind as we get deeper into this, because this is going to be the first thing where the cops are probably going to start piecing things together that are like, this is all broken.
And after dinner, Maggie and Paul went to the kennels, or?
I don't know exactly how that went. I stayed on the couch and I dozed off.
Well, we haven't even put the first red flag away from that whole thing about Maggie wanting, or him going to the parents with Maggie, whatever we just watched, to this one. They're waving strong. We're going to see here in a little bit where that too was a lie, Alec. We know that Snapchat exposed this one. So we already know at this point. Now again, the cops are, they have to be sitting here like, oh my God, this is not good. This is not good, right? Because they're going to get even more evidence that shows, he was at the kennel, right? We have evidence that puts him there at this time. And we'll view that clip when he's kind of confronted with this, because right here he's like, oh, I fell asleep, which is a normal story, right? When I eat, I'm like, I gotta go sit down for a minute, and it takes me about 15 minutes kind of digest. I'm not no young spring chicken, so it's believable. But unfortunately for Alec, and fortunately for Maggie and Paul, technology is exposing these inaccuracies of his.
There is a video on Paul's phone of you and him on the farm that night, and you were in khaki pants and a dress shirt. You were playing with a tree.
I don't remember playing with a tree.
Yeah, I guess there was a tree sapling or something that had fallen over or bending over, and you were trying to get it to stand up. But I mean, the question in that is, when I met you that night, you were in shorts and a t-shirt. At what point in that evening did you change clothes?
I'm not sure. It would have been...
Before dinner or after dinner?
No, it would have been What time of day was that? I would have thought I'd already changed.
There's not a time.
Again, just go ahead and just paint the yard with red flags, because this is just getting disrespectful. I mean, my God. Again, first of all, if you looked at it when he starts saying this, there's times where me watching this, the only reason I could tell it's not a still frame is because the other dude's in there writing, right? Because Alec is just like... Now, one time when he says this, you can see Alec's eyebrows go like this. You can tell he was not expecting this, right? The damn Snapchat. These kids and their damn Snapchat. I mean, Snapchat literally exposed his ass, okay? I'm just going to call it like it is. Snapchat got him, okay? Big time. I mean, he's punching air in his cell right now for Snapchat. When somebody talks about Snapchat, he is bitter, okay? If he had investments, he took them out. Okay, anyways. So... when he's talking about that video, and again, it's the video of him and they had this tree and it was blowing over, wearing the same near the outfit that he has on in here. And the whole thing was like, I don't know. And you can tell he's kind of like, huh? Now here's my thing. To me, I'm just like, well, how much stuff did you do that day, right? I mean, to me, I'm thinking, and we'll look at both sides of it. This is a very memorable day, right? This was hours beforehand, whatever. I mean, again, you rode around with Paul, you did this stuff. Why wouldn't you remember that? But then also there's the shock of it. You might have blackouts in your memory. You know what I mean? So this could be maybe normal to have forgotten this. But they'll show them the video later. This isn't even getting into the video. They haven't received that yet, I don't think, by this time of this. Of the actual proof of, here is the video, it is your voice. Bam, kind of a thing. So let's keep watching. Oh, well, hold on. Then they ask him about changing the clothes, because here's another thing of importance with this is he has this outfit on. Because the major thing with this is, when did he change these clothes that we see him in when he is at the crime scene? Now, we also have heard from the caretaker of Miss Libby, the mother, I keep saying Paul, Alex's mother. And he sounds like he's wearing that kind of an outfit, right? That t-shirt and all that type of stuff. So it almost seems like he was wearing the work clothes, like what he has on now. Did whatever. Let's say if he committed this by himself or with somebody else, did that, changed clothes, cleaned up, went to the mother's house to create the alibi, then left. So let's just keep watching.
But I want to say it looks to be about dusk. So that would have been 7:30, 8 o'clock.
I guess that changed when I got back to the house.
Now on this, again, it's just going back into the whole little details. Time is everything in this case, right? Because Paul, I keep doing it. Alec has presented a very specific timeline. And we've seen numerous bits of evidence from people and now, cell phones and all the stuff, and potentially the thing in your car, Snapchat, this type of stuff. Anyways, that goes against that, right? And so that's where you can tell the cop is like, okay, well, we'll keep going here.
Earlier when we spoke, and you talked about waking up from your nap and then going to check on your mother. And you tried to call Maggie, and you tried to call Paul, and then you sent Maggie a text that you were going to check on your mother. You also told me that Maggie didn't normally go with you to check on your mother, but that she might ride that night. Did you go by and check on her?
Go by and check on my mom?
Maggie, before you left to go?
No, I didn't.
With her not responding to you and thinking that she might ride with you, why didn't you?
I don't remember having plans that Maggie was going to ride with me. But maybe she had told me that she was that night.
Now again, this whole thing of, did you go check on Maggie? Did you, do this and that? Because here's a huge thing, and this is a major question that I have. If the whole point of her coming out to the property was to go to his mother's with him, then number one, why didn't she go? And then number two, if she was busy doing something else, as he claims, she went to the kennels, why didn't he go find her if it was such a point for her to go? And that it was out of the norm for her to do something like this. Because if it was normal for her to be there, and it was like, oh, I'm going to go check on the dogs and do this and do that, and then they got busy and this, that, and the other, I would totally buy the fact that he was like, I'm just going to run on out there. I'm not going to run down there or whatever. But the more we learn about the different entrances here and there, the less it makes sense of, well, why wouldn't you have just swung over there if you couldn't get a hold of him to be like, hey, I need you to come to mom's with me. You know, especially under the guise of, I need some emotional support or this, that, or the other. It doesn't make sense. And now here's the one thing for me that I try and look at where, you know, and I'll pause kind of in our thing to say this, you know, because I try and look at it one way of, okay, let's pretend that he didn't do it, that somebody else did this, that he knows nothing about it, that he was set up, that it had something to do with Mallory, the boat accident, that it was, you know, all that. Then why is there so many different things that are inconsistent in his story? Why are there so many situations like this? Why are there too many conveniences? So I just pose that question.
I don't recall that. I don't remember that specifically, but I mean, it wasn't. She didn't normally go with me. I mean, it's not like we had plans that she was going to ride with me, or that she was going.
Again, this just feels very flimsy, very not very well thought out, right? Because a lot of his story seems very well thought out, and this just doesn't seem like it has a very logical answer. Because I think, for me, if I place myself in the shoes, and honestly, when I sit here and think of this, I'm thinking of like my mom's property, and I think that his dog kennels are farther away than, like, say, what I'm thinking of is like my stepfather's shop to my mom's house. And so I'm trying to think, like, if they were down there and I was talking about, you're going to run over here with me, and I couldn't get a hold of them. I mean, number one, I could probably walk out the door and be like, Mom, you know, but I could pull down the driveway if they weren't calling or coming or, you know, acknowledging. It wouldn't be that big of a deal to pull down there, because at this point I would be like, well, what's up? You know, like something's, you know, now I'm a little worried. You know what I'm saying? And so that would trigger off in me, especially if it was a special circumstance that they were over there with. And again, from the evidence we've heard, which, you know, I can just go strictly with Maggie's sister, right? Who, I mean, I'm sorry, but I believe her over most other people. She has no reason to lie. You know, it's her sister. And I feel like she wasn't out to get Alex. Like, she was not thinking that he had something to do with this in the beginning, right? And I'm not in her brain. I don't know what she thinks now. But she, you know, was not out to get him or whatever. So I believe what she's saying. I mean, this is a special circumstance for this to happen. So even more reason, why not just pull down there and see what's going on?
How often did you go visit your mother down in Atlanta?
I mean, it wasn't infrequent. It wasn't all the time. I mean, visit her, you know, all times a day.
Just checking on her, especially with your dad being short.
She had been having a particularly, you know, she's got Alzheimer's really bad, or pretty bad. And she had been particularly agitated. You know, with him not being there. And
okay, so that gives you a good little background story if you haven't been following this closely, like what's going on with the mother. However, when we heard from the caretaker who was there when he came over, she's like, I wouldn't even venture to say the mother knew he was there. So this whole thing, oh, she'd been having a time, she'd been having this, that, and the other, and blah, 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 blah. You know, so all this fuss and maroo, and I'm just kind of like, okay, well, we're hearing from the caretaker, Miss Libby's caretaker, who, she's like, you know, she really didn't even know he was there. She was in bed. You know, I mean, so that's where I'm kind of like, okay. You know, and again, she's like, you know, yeah, he would come over, but it was kind of odd for him to be there this time. But, you know, his story kind of adds up. It was infrequent. It could be any time of the day, whatever. But it doesn't feel right. It feels convenient.
How long would you say you were at your mom's that night?
45 minutes, an hour.
Okay, I'm talking major red flags here. He says he was at his mother's for 45 minutes to an hour. We will hear from the caretaker of Miss Libby, who was there, that says he was there for 15 to 20 minutes. That's it. And then when he saw her, and I cannot remember the proper word for it, but it has something to do with like a after thing for a funeral, like where people come and eat and stuff like that. And he saw the caretaker there, and this is when he kind of like low-key was like, hey, wink, wink, weddings are expensive. Can I help you out? You know, and he was like, I was at the house for 45 minutes, kind of like telling her, right? And she was like, but I knew that wasn't true. And that's when these feelings start coming in. So here he's going as far as to say an hour, but he was only there for 15 or 20 minutes, and the mother was sleeping, and she said he was laying on the bed on his phone.
It's a chocolate puppy, I think.
Was the leg broken?
Not that I know of.
I can certainly see why something might be wrong with his tail, because when I was out there, he was chasing his tail and whipping through the fence and trying to grab it. So that was all that puppy energy.
Okay, so what he's talking about is the chocolate puppy, again, that will be part of his, we'll say, downfall, right? Because that Snapchat is very damning. And he's referring to this Snapchat that they'll talk about here in a minute, where we hear Alec in the background, Paul's Snapchat, talking to his friend, trying to show him the tail of this dog. And so I think the cop is saying this now to drop that out there to see what kind of reaction he's going to get out of Alec, to see. But again, notice the thing that he does. It's this pattern that he continually repeats every time we see him in these videos.
And Maggie and Paul weren't there. Were there vehicles at the house?
Yes, sir.
How did they get down there that night?
Still, I was hoping you were going to be able to tell me that.
Okay, major thing here. How did they get down there that night? Everybody wants to know. However, and they're going to go back, oh, the truck, oh, this, oh, well, he says Paul doesn't like to walk, Maggie would walk, this, that, and the other. Well, we've heard from the autopsy that there was ATV tracks, bless her heart. Oh, Miss Maggie. I mean, my God, that poor woman. So now it makes me wonder, was that part of the mystery of how they got down there? Because this is kind of like how did they get down there? Did he leave a truck? Did he leave his truck, I'm talking now Alec, or his vehicle, whatever he had, and then take an ATV vehicle down there and kind of maybe sneak up on them or do something so that his truck wasn't there? Because he's so confident in being like the OnStar, we can get the OnStar thing and we can do all that and blah, 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 And so maybe he's thinking, again, we're going on the side to say he did it. Oh, well, I took the ATV down there, and I put Maggie on the back of it, or I put Paul in the back, and Maggie walked down there and met us. And then he got on that. Then my brain also keeps going, well, what if the second person, if there is another person involved, used the ATV? Because, again, I always come back to this. Even with all of this circumstantial, because at the end of the day, no one has put literally a smoking gun in his hand, right? I mean, there is still this, window of, there's that. So, because it's very difficult too, because everything used was like already on the property. So, I just, at first I was like, I don't want to think a father could do this to his son and his wife, right? And then I finally had to accept, okay, I have to, this is, very possible. And then the more evidence that comes out about the autopsy, I'm like, I don't want to think that after all this, he took an ATV and ran all over Miss Maggie. I don't want to think it, but you obviously have to.
So when you were at the kennels, you were just down there with Paul. You left and went back to the house for dinner.
You know, I mean, Paul and I were just knocking around up at the shop, the shed, the kennels, and just the whole property. And that was before dinner, yes, sir.
And you didn't go back down there after dinner until your return trip from visiting your mother?
Yes, sir. Ooh, Mama Jamma. Oh my goodness. Yeah, wow. Fire hot on that one. Twiddly diddly dee. Okay, let's unpack that. If you have not been following, this is flies in the face of what the evidence shows. Flies in the face of what the evidence shows. The Snapchat with the brown dog that he has already talked about, with Maggie in the background talking about the bird. The dog has a bird in its mouth. Then you hear Alec in the background calling the dog's name out, and Paul trying to get this picture of the tail to send to his friend. Not a cute look. Not a cute look. And you notice how he kind of was like, yes, sir. I mean, there wasn't like, he was like a little bit paused there. Like there was, he thought about it a little bit, right?
I've got information that Paul was on the phone and Maggie was heard in the background and you were heard in the background. And that was prior to 9 p.m.
I heard Rogan Gibson ask me if I was up there. He said he thought it was me.
Was it you?
At 9 o'clock?
Yes, sir.
No, sir. Not if my times are right.
So he just point blank asked him, was it you? Then notice when he says, not if my times are right. So does that mean that you're opening the door for them to be wrong and that you were there? To me, that's a passive answer. That is not a confident answer. That is like a, that is a, I know I was there answer. But then on the other side, maybe he is confused about it because, I mean, he witnessed this horrible event. I'm trying to look at both sides of the fence out here and not be completely biased on the side of lock him up, right? But again, why that does not make sense to me, right? It does not make sense to me to be like, well, not if my times are right, be like, no, I wasn't there. I was at my mother's house. I was just getting back from my mom's house. No, I wasn't. I was just getting back from my mom's. To me, that would be the appropriate answer.
Who do you think it could have been?
I have no idea.
And Rogan's been around your family for pretty much all of his life.
Oh, absolutely.
And he recognizes your voice, and you have a distinct voice. Do you think of anybody else that has a voice similar to yours that he may have misinterpreted?
No, sir.
It's like the level of uncomfortableness with this. It's like a major elephant just came and sat in the middle of the room and everyone's having to look around it to be like, no, sir, I can't think of anybody else. Yep, I know he's known my voice all his life. I'm just like, oh my God.
I mean, there's other things people have told me about that 911 call that I don't remember. I don't know here. Like I was calling a dog.
Calling a dog, talking to somebody else. I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, sir. And I mean, there obviously was nobody else out there. And
okay, so this is in reference to the 911 phone call where he's saying that at some point he kind of randomly says here, and the cop is basically like, were the dogs loose? Like, why did you say that? Because it's almost like you're talking to someone else. And of course he's like, well, there's obviously no one else there and the dogs weren't running around. And this is one thing that he does. This reminds me a lot. Let me just say this. If you watch the Casey Anthony, the most recent documentary that came out where she's like, hey, y'all, I know who did it now, kind of a thing. And she would acknowledge, like, when the documentary people would be like, well, here's this obvious weird thing. And she'd be like, it is weird. My voice does sound like that. And you're just like, yeah, she's like agreeing with them because what else can you do? Like, she's trying to take like ownership of it or something. It's almost like and this is like, we're going on the side right now of, he did it and he's lying. He's sticking with the story. So say in his mind, he's like, my story is I showed up and this is how I found them and that's it. I don't know what happened outside of that, and so that's what we're going with. So for him to be like, well, no, obviously there's no one else there, and then this happened and the dogs weren't running around, instead of choosing to think of, oh no, I think the dogs were running around or I was confused, it's almost like little doors and windows open for him to help himself, but he doesn't choose them because he's sticking to a story. But then also if you look on it like, okay, well, maybe this is legit, I'm like, well, yeah, he's on the phone call with 911, right? Like, I mean, who knows why you would say something, right? I mean, who knows? Then you flip back over there and it's like, well, what if there was a secondary person and he's trying to be like, over here, clean this up. But he didn't say the clean this up part, right? Before the person goes off in the woods in the ATV. Let's keep watching.
The reason I'm asking about that, the shot shells that we recovered that night, one was a turkey load, one was buckshot.
I understood that.
The shotgun that you had with you that night, there was a bird shot and a buckshot. When Jeff went back the next day, I'm not sure which attorney it was, pointed out that there had been a shotgun laying on the pool table that he had put away, and pointed out that ammunition that was with that, and it was a buckshot and a bird shot. And then the shotgun that we took for potential comparison, it was also loaded with a bird shot and a buckshot. So I have all of these consistent loads along with what's that in the feed room. I call it the feed room at the kennels. Is that what you call it? That's okay.
Okay, so this is another element of very unique circumstances here. And he was asking him, how does he load a gun? He's telling him, and he's like, okay, well, here's the thing. I found this whole thing of there's a buckshot and a whatever shot loaded up and all these different circumstances around the property. So what's up with that, right? This is such a unique way of loading this gun. Why is it consistent all through the crime scene, the property, the this, the that, these are the shellings we're finding, so on and so forth. And this is another place where I look at it and I'm like, if Alec was set up, if this was random, this is so specific, right? It's so specific. Why would this, how, why, when, where? I would have so many questions how that was recreated in that. That would take so many elements. Like, who would know that to do that?
There were also cartridge casings found by your house, by the side door to the gun room, and at the shooting range. And the ones by the house and some of the ones found at the shooting range are confirmed matches to the ones found by Maggie.
Okay.
So, which gets another concern. I've got the same load as the shot shells in multiple guns and 300 blackout that match ones found on your property.
So you now believe that those guns, that Paul's guns were used?
Yes.
Okay.
And missing.
He slid that and missing part in there. Again, I mean, how would this all add up to this? That's my thing. It's like, okay, the guns are missing. They're Paul's guns, these unique shot shells. The shells match, I mean, all of it. And you see Alec is like, does his thing. Okay, so now you're thinking that his guns were used. And again, I'm just like, oh my God, this elephant in the room, it's getting bigger and bigger by the minute. It's like, yeah, he's definitely thinking that, Alec. And he's definitely thinking that you were holding one of those guns. Okay, I mean, let's do a little bit of math here. You, Maggie, and Paul were on the property. They're not here anymore. Everything used on the thing was from the property and is now missing. But you're still here. Okay. Roll tape.
What the times are, what time of day it was. When the dispatcher asked you when was the last time you saw Maggie or talked to Maggie, you said an hour and a half, 2 hours ago. to me, that's, a set, without thinking about it, you rattled off that time. We're sitting here trying to figure out a timeline. You're having trouble coming up with a specific time.
Oh, man, that's fair.
Tell me again what I said to the dispatcher.
You said an hour and a half ago, probably 2 hours.
And what time was that?
That was when you were on the phone. And the 911 call was made at 10:06. So given 2 hours back, that would have been 8.
Okay, so more on this crazy timeline, right? So here's my thing with this. Now, I go both ways on this because regardless, guilty, not guilty, whatever, in the heat of the moment, I just can't imagine, number one, what would come out of my mouth in the 911 call, because even if I did it, it would be like this major, intense adrenaline amount. So I think I too would be like, wait, what did I say? Like, that kind of thing. But for the cop to go back and be like, you immediately throw out this hour and a half, 2 hours timeline. And he's like, but now you can't think of this stuff. And even though I still am like, okay, but I don't know. I don't really go with that. But the fact that there's so much drama and inconsistencies around the rest of the timeline is where I go back to it and say, yeah, if he was accurate about all the rest of the timeline, I would completely be like, he was just, freaking out. But it just, to me, is another nail in his coffin of more inconsistencies, more lies, more creating windows of time to cover up his window of opportunity.
You said 5 or 5:30. I've gotten the card readout from the law firm, and it shows you going in at 5:30.
Going in the door?
Yes, sir. And Randy says when he left about 6 o'clock, you were still there. So the times aren't matching up.
Now, again, I would personally barely remember what I did yesterday and what times, but this, again, is just way more inconsistencies. It's almost like he went back and tried to fudge all this, but there's this stuff like that, like you said you left them, but we show you going in at that time, and your brother, again, who, why would he lie, is saying you were still there at 6 o'clock, and you're saying that you left at, this other time here. So again, none of his times match up, and that never looks good.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of why.
I believe I left. That's not the first time I was at my office that day.
There were several readings, but your card wouldn't work. Somebody actually had to let you in.
Okay.
But I've got your card opening the door at the law firm at 5:30.
Doesn't have much to say about that one. And I think he was probably a little bit like, oh, okay, you can tell that? Oh, okay. I mean, again, what do you say? Because it just looks like someone who has spent a lot of time creating an alibi.
Me too. The best that I've been able to put together.
It looks like. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I believe Paul was shot first. For the simple fact of where he was located.
How many times was he shot?
Twice.
I thought he shot Maggie first because I could tell he shot her in the back of the head.
Okay, so now we're talking about what actually happened. We are in a crying mode. Okay, again, I do not know how I would act, and I hope I never have to figure that out, right? Obviously. I go two ways with this, which I do a lot of his stuff, and I'm going to look at both sides of it. Like, let's say, legitimately, this was like, oh my God. You would have these questions, right? Well, how many times was he shot? This and that, like, what happened, and da-da-da-da. So there's that. As someone who, let's say he did this, I would be Well, if he did it, he's doing these actions to make it look like he's genuinely, like, well, how many times? Because watching it, I get this vibe where I'm like, oh my God, the cringe. It's like he is so trying to look like he doesn't know. And again, that elephant's blocking him and the cop, right? And it's just glaring. And I just feel like the cop has to be like, come on, buddy. We're going to play this game. But you know which one went down first, and you know how many shots were fired. You can sit here and blubber all you want, but you know exactly what went down.
We may honestly never know who was first, but I think it was Paul, for the simple fact he wouldn't have, if he saw his mother getting shot, he wouldn't have run to that feed room, unless that's where one of the guns was. But we've already established family guns were used, and if they came from Paul's truck was at the house. So where were they?
And how did they get down there?
And how did they get down there?
Again, the vibe that I'm getting from this is mostly cringe, because it just feels like as someone who, it's so glaring that all these questions again, like the cop says, they haven't left the room, right? Meaning the investigation really can't get past him. It's like, dude, you're the one. All this points back to him, right? No matter how you cut the cake, it's still a cake, right? It's just, it is what it is. And so him sitting here, but how'd they get down there? And he's trying to point that out. Like, notice that he's trying to point out the perplexing part, because that might be the one thing that he's like, okay, well, I got him there. I took the ATV down there, or whatever it might be. Or maybe there was a secondary person involved that came and helped clean something up, or, who knows. But that whole mysterious part of it is what, honestly, to me, creates some reasonable doubt, and is, it just makes the waters muddy.
It's normal for y'all to leave your keys in the cars. However, if somebody showed up and did this, you're not going to take Paul's truck back to the house and leave the key in it.
Again, the questioning, none of it. I just like to say it, none of it can leave the room, right? Because these are logical questions that when you start to go through this, and again, the whole aspect of maybe he was set up or whatever, and that's a viable thing, right? There was bad blood in the community. There were people that were not happy with him. When you hear the stuff he did, right? But it's so vast, the amount of stuff pointing back to him and whatnot, that I don't see any other way of it.
Did y'all get any kind of forensic of anything that y'all found? Just the rain and the...
Yeah. We got plenty of DNA from the scene, but
yeah.
It's Nolan's, it's Rogan's, it's Alex, it's Paul's, it's Maggie's, it's Buster's.
Everybody's got.
Yeah.
David, can you tell me for sure? Did either one of them live after they were shot the first time?
Not long.
Was that
the shooting happened very quickly. Very quickly.
Okay, so now he asked for did you get any forensics? Did you get any of this? Again, if I was him in this situation, guilty or not guilty, I would have caught on to the vibe that it's not looking good, right? Like, I'm potentially looking at it as a suspect. From the get-go, I would have realized this with the whole talk from my lawyer. There are certain things I would not have asked because of that, especially if I was innocent. Now, these would be questions that would be just burning my damn grits up if I was guilty, wanted to know, right? Now, also notice when he goes into the whole thing immediately with we got DNA, but it's yours, it's this, it's that, it's the families, right? No DNA pointing at anybody else. We start crying again. Did they suffer? kind of a thing, right? And so, you know, again, one thing I notice with his crying is it usually comes on in a moment of stress. One pattern I see with him is that when he's painted into a corner with something, that's when he does these things like this, you know, let me, you know, wipe the family out. Let me stage something on the side of the road. Let me start crying. Let me point it back to my sorrows. These kind of things. It's like this reactionary type thing that he does.
Is this one person, two persons, three persons? Is that the first time he's ever asked you that?
Yes, sir.
Ever?
That I recall, yes.
In the whole investigation at this point?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
I've got 2 guns. I've got 2 different types of ammunition. It's hard to say. It is hard to say.
I felt like this is a little bit of the old steering. Is it 2 people, 3 people? And I left that whole thing in there so you can see the lawyer coming up. Is this the first time he's ever asked this? Well, we've got 2 kinds of ammunition, and boom, boom, boom. Interesting. Even though it's a pattern where it's like, well, we see this pattern all over the property, like this 2, you know, thing or whatever, there's 2 kinds of ammunition. You know, one thing I started thinking was he did this to make it look like there was 2 different people, right? But the fact that he's like all of a sudden like, oh, is it multiple people? You know, it's kind of like, let's stop. He's a lawyer. Let's start thinking like a lawyer on one side, because it's very apparent that they think you had something to do with this, and they're questioning that way, and it's great to help. But it's just, it's giving, I'm trying to come up with an alibi. I'm trying to steer the thought process.
But what my thought was, and I don't know if this is even possible, but if we get the estate and we get the personal representative who is now the authorized person to authorize it to be opened. I mean, surrounded by 100 lawyers. We get a probate done like that, and I can have the powers of appointment done in 2 days, and we can authorize whatever it is you need to open.
And that might be beneficial.
So
I think Randy and I, or somebody and I have talked about that
yeah,
before.
Yeah, well, and I said I'd do it. Any of us can do it.
Yeah. Who would be the representative? Just somebody at a law firm?
Probably one of your brothers, I would think.
For Maggie and Paul's estate,
Yeah.
probably me, or
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
one
I
of my
would do
brothers,
it.
but whoever it is, it doesn't matter. Whoever it
Yeah.
is will be whatever
Yeah.
y'all need to do to. No, it won't be anybody that'll be uncooperative.
Okay.
Now, notice how he kind of perks up on this conversation and acts like kind of like, oh, what? Huh? Paula Maggie's estate? You know, oh, I mean, I guess I would do it. And I'm like, isn't that convenient? Now, when nobody takes the bait, or, you know, or one of our brothers or somebody, but it doesn't matter. Whoever's doing it, they're going to make sure that we can get these things released and everything's speeding through and done. They're not going to be getting paid. You know, we're trying to help, you know. Again, you couldn't have given me good money to have offered my name up as the person who would work on that. Just wouldn't have done it. And now we get multiple reasons, right? Now, again, this is in the framework of trying to, you know, get, you know, certain things signed and this and that. We're not just talking about money here. Especially knowing at this point all the financial crimes, I'm like, oh my God, I certainly wouldn't have said anything knowing that this is all going to blow up, right? But
Well, I mean, yeah, y'all been taking a licking in the press about not disclosing stuff, but Jesus Christ, man.
I don't have anything to disclose.
Well, and you know, why are you going to tell the bad guy what you got?
Thank you.
You know? I mean, I just don't understand it. I mean, look.
Nobody wants to know more than this man right here and this man right here.
I know.
Everybody else.
I believe that.
Everybody else.
David, how far apart in time were the shot? Did one of them know the other one was dead or had been shot?
I think it's impossible to answer that question.
y'all, that one, I was like, No. Okay, when he's like, no one wants to know but this man and me. Now, here, when he says that, but here in a minute with our little grand finale, we're going to see what the cops have been building up to, right? And for Paul to immediately go into performance mode. I keep saying Paul. God, I'm sorry. For Alec to completely go into performance mode. Was it far apart? And again, I'm just like, oh my God. And what it felt like to me is he was just like, the man asked me to dance, so I'm gonna dance. Hand me my dancing shoes, and he started dancing. And it just and that cop had to be like, "Are you kidding me? I'm ready to slap the cuffs on this guy."
I think it is impossible.
But you certain Paul was shot first?
I believe he was. I'm not certain. I believe he was.
Maggie would have known that then, wouldn't she? You don't know how soon afterwards she was shot?
And it all depends on how many shooters were there.
Again, it's very interesting to me that at this point, now we don't know. At this point, the cops are still thinking maybe there's another shooter. If they still think that and they're still searching, we don't know, right? But it's very interesting to me that they would say that, it depends on how many shooters were there, or if they're trying to lead him on to be like, we kind of know what he did. And playing along with this game of like, Maggie knows what was going on because you were there, but again, only a few people will ever really truly know this.
Thank you. I know y'all are doing everything you can. And I don't take any personal offense at asking me these questions. I know you got to do what you got to do.
Always very helpful, but again, he's a lawyer, and so he knows that this is how this has to go. So this is more what I would consider a normal behavior, right? This, hey, I get what you got to do what you got to do. Hit me with your best shot.
Still trying to figure this out. I cannot exclude the boat incident and those involved. I know that y'all are currently going through the civil portion. How far had that progressed? I mean, were y'all in the talks? Was it breaking down?
Can I say something real quick? I know nothing about the any of that stuff, and he's represented by lawyers in that case. Mm-hmm. I don't think I personally believe he shouldn't be talking about that.
I mean, again, the little Chihuahua lawyer just interrupting all the fun. Sorry, Roscoe. I mean, no offense or nothing. But, I mean, I get it, right? I mean, he is doing a good job of being like, hey, whoa. So, just wanted to bring that up.
Did one party say this and y'all countered or something like that where the other people are pissed off? And now we have somebody out there with more motive because now they're thinking, Paul's going to get away with this. And
I mean, I'm not aware of any of those discussions. The only thing that I am aware of is that I've learned that one of the daddies of one of the kids in the boat wreck went to lengths to, or maybe it was his son, I don't know, but I was told that there are people out there that were being told you can't be friends with Paul and the Murdaughs and with us. You got to choose.
Now, one thing that I find interesting in all the stuff that we look at in regards to the questions about the boat accident, around town, so on and so forth, is Alec kind of plays it down where he's like, I know this is going on, but they didn't really tell me the full extent of it. I know Paul is having issues, this, that, and the other. And one would expect, in my mind, that if he was trying to throw them off, he would ham that up. But then I'm also like, well, maybe he doesn't want to do that because he's like, there's no real evidence to show that, and that might make it look suspicious if I do, because they're not going to really find anything. But you wouldn't expect to either. I mean, you see the thought process here, right? And we can keep going and going. Because honestly, when this first popped off, I legit thought that's what happened. I was like, oh my God. gosh. You know what it reminded me of? Pike County, that whole situation that went down with that the two families in the custody thing and the family white, the other family out and all that. I was like, this is just a different circumstances, but I thought that something like this went on. And so it was like a logical thought process to take. So, but I noticed that Paul doesn't pay, or, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, that Alec doesn't really give it the weight that one would expect, which I find interesting.
Okay, I tell you what. Yeah, we were laughing about that because he's laughing because I'd gone to great lengths to try to, that tree had gotten knocked over, and I'd gone to great lengths to try to get it to, be upright.
Okay.
And,
Was that night? Because the friends that we talked to said it was posted that night.
I'm not sure.
Okay, now this is where they have shown him the Snapchat of the tree. Paul Snapchat, tree bending over, Dad, Alec over there with it, Paul's laughing. This is one of those where when he was like, did that happen that night or whatever? And I was like, is Alec rebooting? I mean, tap, tap, tap. Is something wrong? I mean, he just froze. And he's like, I'm not sure. And to me, I was like, he doesn't know how that fits in the timeline. He can't just answer and be like, yeah, that was that night. A normal person will probably be like, yeah, I remember we did that. To me, that's a memory you might have with your son of, yeah, I remember, you know what, we were riding around the truck, we were looking at trees, he kept laughing at me because of this thing, and then 3 hours later, he was dead. That just seems like something you would remember, right? But apparently not.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. I just a few more questions.
Okay.
Did you kill Maggie?
No. Did I kill my wife?
Yes, sir.
No, David.
Do you know who did?
No, I do not know who did.
Did you kill Paul?
No, I did not kill Paul.
Do you know who did?
No, sir, I do not know who did. Do you think I killed Maggie?
I have to go where the evidence and the facts
I
take me.
understand that.
Okay, so this whole time, I don't take no offense at this, yeah, oh, good boy, yeah. And then he sits through this whole damn interview and he's like, did you kill Maggie? No. Now, I'll give Alec this. He admit, no. Did I kill my wife? No, David. Did you kill Paul? No. Immediately denies it, but he acts pissy about it. Again, I don't know Alec, but to me, I'm just like, is he acting like he thinks they want him to act? Because he's been super cool with them, asking him anything and wants to be helpful. So I'm almost like, what his initial reaction should it have been, and again, we don't know how he would act in this, I certainly don't, should he have been more like, I know you have to ask that, of course I did not do this. But then he follows it up with, do you think I killed Maggie? Why would you ask that? Why would you ask that if you have been so, I get that you have to do this, I understand. He just said, I understand that. That does not feel good to me, that interaction, right? I mean, and honestly, I was waiting for the cops to ask it. I was kind of like, oh, Lord mercy, they dropped that bomb at the damn end. And of course, they have to ask this, right? And I don't know how it feels someone asking me that in that context, like, did you kill whoever, right? No. I mean, it would be kind of a jarring question, right?
You think I killed Paul?
I have to go where the evidence and the facts take me, and I don't have anything that points to anybody else at this time.
So does that mean that I am a suspect?
You were still in, like I told Corey earlier, you were still in this. With everything that we've talked about, with the family guns, the ammunition, nobody else's DNA. I have to put my beliefs aside and go with the facts.
Well, okay. After all that, he asked, so you think I'm a suspect? And I'm just like, whoa, okay. Obviously, we don't understand nuance or taking clues. Maybe that's why all the family guns and the family bullets and all that kind of stuff was used to do the crime. If it was him, allegedly. I mean, my God, Lord have mercy. Rockin' and a robin, tweedly diddly dee over this one. Whew. Okay, y'all, so here's some final thoughts. Like the cop said, he has to go with where the evidence points to it. The evidence points to someone in the family did this, right? And he's the only one still living, aside from Buster. And Buster wasn't there. That was such a grand finale. Because, I just go back to it where I'm like, well, your lawyer called this out in the beginning. And you wanted to be so helpful, but now that they've, like, packed you into a corner, and he's getting kind of like, you know. One thing that I get asked a lot in the comment sections is, why would he do this? Why, if not for the money and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And here's one thing I keep coming back to because, and again, if you watch me, you're thinking, Paul's biased, he thinks he did it. Yes, I've gone back and forth with this, y'all. I have not this whole time thought, I didn't think for the longest time that he did this, right? And then I was like, somebody else did it. And then now I'm like, okay, I think he just did it. But then there's always this window in the back of my head of maybe he had someone else help cover up or something. I mean, I don't know. And those statements are completely separate of my thoughts of how do I think the case is going in court, right? Because you can have all those thoughts and still feel like they haven't proven the case in court, okay? I 100% get that feelings don't mean convictions, okay? That's why we do things. That's why we're on the sofa and not at damn law school, okay? Good Lord. Anyways, but people ask me a lot of times and I go back to this and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, aside from, yes, money could be a motivation. Look at what some of these other men have done to their families for far less. Look at the man that just drove his children and wife off a cliff over some argument. Look at Chris Watts. Okay, there's no people like us, we're not thinking like this dude. Allegedly him, but like the Chris Watts, the people like this do this stuff. Countless other people. The dude in Fayetteville, the army guy, I can't think of his name right now. You name it. Okay? They are thinking, they're not thinking like normal people. They could be the type of narcissist that's like, I am going to be a failure, therefore I can't let the family know, so I'm going to wipe them out. Now this is different because Buster survived. I still go back to it's very interesting to me that Paul looks like Maggie and Buster looks like Alec and Buster is still alive. I question if Buster had been there and Paul not, would this have happened? I think there is huge amounts to be played into the fact that Buster had this lawsuit going on and Maggie was catching on to what was going on financially. Checks were bouncing, this and that. We heard the sister say she wasn't into the money thing. She wasn't, the organization wasn't her strong point, I believe her sister said. But she was catching on. I mean, places are starting to tell you that your checks are bouncing and this and that. And something was up, right? She knew this. She was finding this out. His world was closing in on him. Take all this aside, the level of financial crimes this man has pulled is astronomical. This man has ripped like everybody off, okay? He has stolen from little old ladies, and I mean that is literal, okay? Ripped his business off, ripped everybody off. He has used his family's good name and rubbed it in the mud. And I do believe that I did it again. Oh my God. Take a shot every time I mispronounce the name. I'm so sorry. Alec has taken his family's good name and used that to create fraud. I mean, we heard his CFO, I believe it was, say this. And it's true. The evidence shows this. This man did this. When his back is to the corner, he does something to distract. And this was a huge distraction. He was getting ready to be confronted with all of this, and then bam, this happens. Now, this would serve many things. Number one is Paul's not around to mess up the civil suit anymore, and do all that. He could have him in control of the family name and the money and all this, and and probably pulling things to do whatever he was going to do. Number two, life insurance, this kind of stuff, yada, 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 whatever he's going to get. You see where I'm going with this? Maggie not exposing him, and then who's going to, just like they said, we didn't want to confront him with the money stuff. His family was just blown away. There's so many reasons, but again, at the end of the day, we've seen where some of these men will do this, and women too, but mostly this happens with men mostly, because they want to, date a new girl, and they, their wife went out of town to visit their family, and she came home, and he had been dating a girl for 6 weeks or whatever. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's just, we've seen it all. And so, I mean, I wasn't there. I don't know. I don't know if Alec did this. I can only go on what my gut tells me, and my gut says something's not right here. However, I do still feel like there's like this big window of like, I don't know, right? I can't put the gun in his hand. There's something not right about the whole thing. And I don't know if it's the cleanup process or what, but, time will tell, right? The fact that every aspect of this case has literally just turned upside down to where you're like, how did we arrive in this world of this level of, scandal and corruption, and just everywhere you turn, this tragedy. And then all the lies and deceit that Alec has told, it's, shocking, which doesn't make it a far throw, I should say, for something like this. But then on the other side, again, you've heard people say, even in the face of all this is a good family. These were good people. The caretaker of Miss Libby said, these are good people. This is a good man. You can be two things at one time. We've seen many people who had good names. Look at the dude who was, BTK, I believe it was. This man was a good standing citizen, taking people out left and right in the most heinous of ways. Children, for God's sakes. For no good reason. People have done more for less, is what I have to say to that. And again, I'm no professional, right? I'm just a guy with a sofa and a little doggy who's been sleeping very patiently. Let's give him some hearts in the comment section, but more importantly, let's give the victims hearts, sofas, and love. If you are still watching, thank you. I really appreciate it. We'll continue to watch this trial and talk about bits and pieces of it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a friend. And until we gather around the sofa and Roscoe and all that, so there's that, and we'll talk to you soon.